Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm Jonathan Freedman. Our next guest in the studio is Kendra James Anderson, CEO of the finance Femme. Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
You know, before you came on the segment and I saw the finance Femme, I sort of felt like Wonder Woman, going to come out and, make sure that your finances are in order. Tell us a little bit about your business and what it is. Are you an action hero?
Well, I wish. It's the first time I've heard that. Yeah, I might have to take that on. We do love to support women in their business with all things finance, so accounting and finance and taxes. And so, thinking about it from a superhero perspective definitely helps lighten it a little bit, because I know it's a little boring sometimes to talk about those topics, but they're very important. And so, yeah, that's what me and my team do. We come in and kind of serve as that back office for women-owned businesses.
Do you find it's an area that people are often what's the word I'm looking for? Not very well versed in, and so there's a lot of fear of the unknown, and in a lot of cases, I suspect embarrassment because they may have, things may be a little messier than they hope coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's both, right? It's a little bit of the fear of the unknown, and then there's that unknown. There's also some fear of judgment, and they're both very real feelings and very valid feelings. However, it's just like that, saying with like going to the dentist. There's nothing that the dentist hasn't seen before. Don't worry about it. But it's easier said than done. However, this is literally what we love doing. We love the number crunching and the solving for things. And so, almost consider it a gift to give us your quote unquote mess for us to kind of untangle. We really are here to support. But I do understand that fear does happen. And there is a lack of knowledge around certain things, but that's no one's fault. It's not taught in school. Even if you go to business school, yes, sure, you'll take some accounting courses, maybe some finance courses, but a lot of stuff in entrepreneurship is really, you're learning it as you go. And so while you might learn about profit margins and gross margins when you're in class, it doesn't really apply until you're really living the life. And you're like, oh, maybe I do actually need to price it this way because I need X more profit in order to run the business. It's life lessons that really teach you the bulk of it.
Yeah, and I think to your point, a lot of what we learn in school is to use the term cookie cutter, and very rarely does life fit into that cookie cutter mold. And so, when you're looking at your clients' unique circumstances or situations, they're all unique in some way, and you have to guide them based on their circumstances.
Absolutely. And that's the fun part about it, is that you can take that foundational information that is relatively black and white. I mean, 1+1 is 2, but you have to factor in those other things that are very subjective to really understand what works for this particular business at this particular time, based on what's going on, macro environment, micro environment. There's so much that you have to really take into consideration. And the book knowledge is great. It's foundational, but it's really the life lessons that are going to teach you the bulk of it.
What is, and this there may not be a traditional answer, but what is the traditional entry point for you? Where are companies, where your clients are at? What stage and phase are they at? I know it's probably not, a typical, and they probably run the gamut, but when do you see people reaching out and needing your assistance?
I would say the bulk of the time is when they're ready for that first hire. So a lot of the times it is when they are, somewhere around 200, 300K a year in sales, depending if they're product based or service based, but they're usually ready to make that first hire. And it's nervous, it's a nerve wracking, time for them, because they're like, how much do I pay? How much can I afford? What's a good salary? So I would say that's usually the first time.
Do you find that up until that point, it's a little bit of, in many cases, they're not drawing a regular salary, or they're, commingling their personal and the business. And so it's all sort of like one big, excuse me, pile. And now that they're, taking on or expanding or thinking about hiring somebody, it's like, oh, now I have to think about cash flow, because somebody's going to want a paycheck every week or 2 weeks. And, how do I fit that in?
Exactly. If they're, one of the first big struggles in entrepreneurship is actually figuring out the commingling part of it. And so there's often a lot of, to your point, mixing of business and personal, and having to figure out, okay, What do I do? And of course, that's obviously a tax issue, right? If you're doing that, but it also is just muddying the waters of understanding your business, how your business is actually performing. So that's definitely one of the first big steps. But I do think that when someone is ready to make that first hire, it's nerve-wracking from a financial standpoint, but also from an operational standpoint, because you're like, okay, I'm going to actually be managing a person and almost be responsible for a person. And so there's a lot of that nervousness that comes along with that. And so they really kind of seek to have some type of an advisor step in and help them along the way.
And how does your service work? I know you have a fractional CFO, and then you offer a whole bunch of other services, whether it's tax. You actually file tax returns, your CPAs, and so you run the gamut in terms of types of activities that you offer or services that you offer. What is it mix and match depending on the circumstances? Does it evolve over time? How do you typically approach that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we actually, when I originally started this almost 10 years ago, it was solely to serve as a fractional CFO because that's my background is in corporate finance. And that's what I really love is the finance side of it. But I found that so many of the clients that I was supporting didn't have accurate accounting records. And so I was like, okay, well, I had to bring on accountants into my team because at that point I'm like, okay, well, we have to obviously have your accounting correct before we can do some fractional CFO, analysis. So then I built out the accounting team, and now here about a year ago we started to build out the tax side because we were like, okay, we were finding that we got the accounting down and the finance part down for growth and scaling, but then they needed tax strategy. And so the building or the business really evolved naturally over time to pick up these other segments that are all very much intertwined and related. And so that's actually how it happened, just very organically happened. And so now, yes, we offer accounting, full service accounting, so AP, AR, payroll, all of that. Fractional CFO, which is really more on the strategy side. And then taxes, from tax preparation to tax strategy. So it's really that end-to-end finance support for you.
Wonderful. And I know you work a lot with women-owned businesses. Do you work with others as well, or is that specifically the market that your firm targets?
Yeah, that's exactly who we target. I will say we do have a few, we call them a few cool dudes that we do have on our client list that kind of snuck in there, but we typically focus on supporting women-owned businesses. But we're here to really help out anyone who needs our support.
Wow, I'm curious what the demarcation is of a cool dude that gets on board, but it sounds like that may be a subject for a different day. Great.
Yeah, we're here. We're definitely here to support.
So what people often don't think about in the context of service providers who work with entrepreneurs is that very often and almost exclusively, they are entrepreneurs themselves. So would you talk a little bit about your experience? Because I know you worked in, if my math is correct, Fortune 500 companies through your career. And so you've worked in very large organizations and at some point took the leap of faith and decided you wanted to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about that, either process and or some of the great lessons that you learned? Because at Radio Entrepreneurs, we're all about offering up experiences for people to emulate and hopefully mix stepping on some of the landmines.
Yes, yes. So honestly, I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. Like I was very settled and happy in my corporate job. I just wanted to climb that corporate ladder. That was my focus. Entrepreneurship wasn't like in the family, so I didn't know much about it. It just kind of always seemed like a distant thing that other people, ran businesses. And so I was very content in corporate, but I had friends that were running small businesses and they were actually doing really well from a sales perspective, but they did not understand their numbers. And so they didn't feel like they were making millions of dollars in their business, but were cash strapped. And I'm like, I don't understand how you're a solopreneur. It's just you. You don't have a team. How are you cash strapped? And so I finally was like, let me talk to your accountants. And they were like, accountants, Kendra, we don't have an accountant. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have an accountant? So that's when it opened my eyes to the fact that there are so many small businesses that are doing really well from a sales perspective because they're great at what they're doing, but they were just struggling financially to understand how to, really operate their business. And so that's really how it started. And it started as a side hustle that I just did for a few friends while I was still in corporate, because again, I'm still just trying to climb the corporate ladder. But what I realized was after about 6 months of doing that, the these business owners, their lives were changed because, as an entrepreneur, it's lesson number one. When your business is doing poorly, it struggles. It's a
Right.
struggle for you.
Got to
But when
keep
you're
the cash. Keep the cash.
Yes, yes. How your business is performing impacts your day-to-day life when you are working for yourself. And so when I saw that impact, it was very easy for me to leave corporate because GE was going to make billions of dollars, whether I was there or not. But these young ladies were, things were changing for them when we were actually implementing things. So that's when I went into entrepreneurship. That's why it all happened. And but I will say that as far as the landmines, one big lesson that I've learned, and this actually happened 3 years ago with the birth of my son, is you really want to check in with yourself as often as possible about what's important to you in your business, because those things will change sometimes. So, when I first went into business, I was working crazy hours, which I guess sometimes is expected, but I was working crazy hours because I was just trying to scale it and understand it and wear all of the hats. And that was fine for that point in life, but it was not sustainable. I didn't know that it wasn't sustainable. I thought I could do it forever until I had my son, and
Until
he was
somebody else
born.
dictates your time.
Exactly, exactly. Until I was like, okay, and so priorities shifted, and so then my business model shifted. I'm still doing the same thing and still serving the same people, but the way in which I'm doing it is different. And so just checking in with yourself, because it's perfectly okay to understand that what maybe got you here in your business is not necessarily going to get you to the next step in your business. And maybe some things from a team perspective or operationally just have to shift in order to still be in alignment with what you're wanting out of life. There's business, there's the profit of your business, but there's also the peace of your life, and you want to balance the two.
Wonderful advice. I couldn't have said it better myself. So really appreciate you sharing that insight and your own experiences. Kendra James Anderson, CEO of the Finance Femme. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, find out about your business, maybe get some more insights from you and engage your services?
Yeah, the best thing is to go to the website. So that's thefinancefemme.com, or you can also check us out on social media at The Finance Femme.
I feel like you should go like this now with your,
I'm going to start.
superpowers.
I'm absolutely going to start doing that.
Kendra James Anderson, CEO of the Finance Femme. It's been a pleasure having you on Radio Entrepreneurs.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate your time, and we'll be right back with another segment on Radio Entrepreneurs.